This is the worst podcast in the history of podcasts. Nobody listens. The ratings are a disaster. Total amateurs running it. Very unfair to me, and frankly, it should be taken off the air immediately.
Welcome to That's Not the Message, a podcast focused on political communication to help pro-Europeans, pro-Democrats win campaigns by reaching beyond their base with the right message. My name is Sebastian Rodriguez.
I'm Daniela Vancic.
And today we have a very special podcast because, we have been hearing the feedback that you had been sending to us through different channels. And Daniela, what was the feedback that we got?
Yeah, well, we were told we can make it a little bit more fun. We have some ideas for that.
Yeah.
But what people didn't understand was that we filmed the whole recording in one batch. We filmed all those episodes together. So there was a lot of feedback about our outfits and especially some critiques about your vest.
Yeah, that I needed to change my vest. And so we reached out to a very dear sponsor that we know because of their values. And that sponsor is Submarine. They are a production company creating political content based in Barcelona, but doing business all over Europe. They are an award-winning company. They won awards with the Napolitan Awards, for example, in the United States. And now they are supporting us. And we will tell you a little bit more about Submarine in the future, but we have them right next to our hat, next to our logo. And I think it's a great sponsor to have to kick off this new round of episodes. What are we going to be focusing on today, Daniela? What's going to be the message and what's not the message?
Yeah, well, recently there was big news on the enlargement front, on EU enlargement, which is an area I'm focusing on and following very closely because, of course, I have Serbian background.
Yeah.
And there was the news recently that Montenegro is getting closer and closer to becoming the 28th member state. The idea is 28 member states by 2028. Yeah. And the council just agreed to take the next step. For the first time since Croatia joined the EU in 2013, we've now reached this next step to bring Montenegro closer to the EU.
Yeah, and we want to make sure that our views are also very clear, which is we do support this enlargement towards those broader countries for Europe for many, many reasons. But what hasn't been really the message on enlargement so far? Why are we doing this episode right now?
Yeah, in Brussels and beyond, I think we're so obsessed with looking, is Montenegro ready for enlargement? Is Albania ready to join the EU? And we don't look inward, are we also ready? Are EU citizens, is the EU 27 ready for enlargement? And I don't mean in the sense of are we ready to expand to have more members, because there will be challenges there, but more on the technical side of things. There will be a referendum in France to approve or reject Montenegro joining the EU. So the next step in this is not going to be just getting Montenegro ready. They're closing chapters and adopting reforms very, very quickly. But it's also going to be getting the EU 27 ready, meaning the citizens, the people, the voters who might be voting in referendums that could make it or break it whether Montenegro actually joins. Even if Montenegro does everything perfectly, French voters could put a stop to this.
Yeah. So Montenegro is ready is not the message. They are ready. We will see it today. But is the European public opinion ready for expanding in an environment of chaos, conflict, uncertainty? Let's talk. Let's dive in. And let's dive in being positive in the sense, because I think this is a good story for pro-Europeans and pro-democracy activists and political candidates, NGOs to tell to people. But let's make sure that we get to these people with the right message. And of course, every country and every audience will be different, but let's try to establish a good narrative for enlargement. And right now, let's start from, I always say with narratives, so you need to create a narrative that matches people where they are emotionally. And then you try to bring them back to you. And if I ask you, Daniela, to go now, outside of the EU bubble, sit in a random bar and have a conversation with one person about whether the EU should enlarge to Montenegro, that person would probably, what do you think? Would probably be like pro enlargement, not pro enlargement, would be like, I don't know, I need more information. What do you think?
I think they would not know where Montenegro is on the map, first of all. So clearly we have a lot more education to do, to get the EU 27 also aware of, who these countries are, what are they about, where are they, how big are they? I mean, Montenegro, we'll say it's like it's a small country, and it's the size of the city of Paris.
Yeah.
Right. So it's I think there's a lot of awareness raising to still do in that sense. I think that's going to be the first question is not, okay, enlargement. All right. Well, we've seen it before in Europe. It's not the first time Europe is enlarged. The question from, I think, the average person, in a rural area who is going to have a vote just as much as the cosmopolitan, metropolitan person in the city of Paris, their question is going to be, where is Montenegro and who is Montenegro?
Yeah. That question was a little bit tricky because I have the answer. At least from a public opinion point of view, I looked at the European Commission special Eurobarometer that specifically asked about perception on EU enlargement. And chances are that if you meet that person on a random restaurant or in a random bar, that person will be more likely to be in favor of EU enlargement. Actually, that survey put 56% of Europeans in favor of enlargement, whereas 38% would be opposed. And the majority of people would support the enlargement in 23 out of the 27 member states. So chances are that if you go to places like Belgium or places like Spain, that person, it would be more likely to be in favor. But at the same time, when this very same survey asked whether they would feel informed, the vast majority of people said, I would actually need more information. So I guess your answer was right. I think your answer would be, the answer of that person would be, in principle, sounds like a good idea, but I need more information. And I think that's where we need to start creating this awareness.
Yeah.
What would be, for example, like ways to raise awareness? I think it's also like really important that we we think outside of the box and we look at all the tools available to make sure that people understand, that that Montenegro to begin with is on the map, is close to us. It has links with our values, with our traditions. But we've been looking at, what are the best non-political, like cultural, perhaps sports events that we could start doing to put Montenegro on the map.
Yeah, there's a lot of this like cultural diplomacy ideas that are out there of introducing Montenegro in different ways, to the EU 27. For example, like at having like cultural or food festivals.
Yeah.
In Paris, again, we're always talking about Paris, but France is going to be the one that definitely has a referendum. If not, other member states can do it as well. But France is the for sure one. So we could do, they could do things like having, Balkan festivals, Western Balkan festivals, introducing Montenegro, and the other ones. I mean, Albania is not so far behind, so I think we can already start doing the work now. There could be, for example, we could host a soccer match in Podgorica, in Montenegro. I bet you didn't know Podgorica maybe was the capital of Montenegro. Maybe some people listening to this are finding that out for the first time. But we could have like a football match there, right? That also brings together, different European teams. I think a lot of people would watch that. So there are a lot of ideas out there about like cultural diplomacy to introduce these countries to the EU 27. There's already a lot of effort with tourism, right? And Albanian campaigns in the Netherlands have been really popular. And really successful in bringing Dutch visitors and vacation goers to Albania. So there's tons of ways to do that.
And of course, using cultural moments, like you mentioned Albania, you have this sensation right now with Dua Lipa, like going all over the world. Probably not many people would know that she has Albanian origins, and all those type of things that people actually feel. You also mentioned tourism, sports, and all these events where people are like having feelings of joy, of competition, of also understanding like tourism, like experimenting the country, the language, the culture. They are probably more important than the best communication campaign that a Brussels official can put together, right?
There's going to be the expo in Belgrade too, in Serbia in 2028,
Yeah.
2027.
Yeah.
Yeah, but very, very soon, right? And that's going to bring people, I mean, Europeans definitely, but people from all over the world then to the Western Balkans and another EU candidate country. Yeah.
And Montenegro, the second thing that, going back to this Eurobarometer data, is the easiest candidates to explain to EU publics. Because when they ask for different countries, the first countries that they, again, this survey, the results from the survey was that Montenegro, together with Ukraine, were the countries that received the most support, followed by Albania, followed by North Macedonia, and some other countries. There was some distance. I think even Albania was probably the one that had the lowest level of support in principle. But there is really like a really good story in Montenegro for us to go out and campaign. And so the moment is okay, we have this understanding that Montenegro is on the map. We went to visit its famous beaches, and then we maybe went to a sport event, or we followed, or we stumbled upon a food festival, Balkan food festival. We know it's in the map, but now needs the convincing part. And in order for us to convince people that this is the right move, we need to start providing with some arguments and with some narratives about why this enlargement is gonna make people feel safer in Europe, how it's gonna make people feel more influential, and definitely more prosperous. This goes back to the previous episode when we said right now cost of living is amongst the top priorities of Europeans, also closely followed by security. So how can we link Montenegro being member of the EU with us being more prosperous, more influential, safer in this world? How do you think? What examples can we land to them? How can we try to put this narrative into action?
Yeah. Well, what's not going to work is by saying chapter 23 has closed, or technical benchmark A has closed, or like anything that's a PDF from the European Commission website is not going to work then in the messaging sense. I think, what you need to do is put it into context of the geopolitical situation that we're in today.
Exactly.
We have a military war with Russia on one end. We have an economic war with China on another side. And we have now a political war with the Americans on the other side of the Atlantic. And I think like with this kind of framing, I think people get it. I think you see a lot of the headlines, and I think a lot of people, even the non-political ones, are kind of like, where's Europe in all of this? What is the situation in the Middle East? But where's Europe in all of that? What is Europe actually, what are they doing there in Brussels about this? And I think that this could be an answer to that, is that we're expanding influence. It's not we need to stop, we so much think like enlargement is like charity. We need to stop talking about it as if it's charity, as if we're offering these candidates, something. Of course, it's something special, and it's such a privilege to be part of the EU and then have those.
And for me, it would be a radical economic and societal transformation.
Yeah, but we have to stop treating it like charity and treating it more like it is a security question for us in Europe. It is our security influence. It is our advantage to expand. It means less Russian leverage in this area. The more that these countries are closer to the EU in terms of the accession progress, but especially when they're an EU member, the more EU intervention you could have in these countries. Imagine a scenario where Hungary was not an EU member. The reason, they had also frozen EU funds. and misuse of EU funds, which then the Peter Matra was able to campaign on and say there was this misuse of funds and frozen funds. What a missed opportunity, and if there hadn't been that European connection at all, maybe Hungary would have been a lost for us and as for the pro-democrats and for Europeans. And that's the situation we see with with Serbia. They're inching farther and farther away from Europe. The more they do that, the less intervention Europe can have in Serbia. So I think by also bringing these countries closer, it means that they also will be closer to the values of Europe, which is democracy. And
we're gonna go back to the values in a moment, and the safeguards that also people inside the European Union would like to see for new members and how we can reassure them. But let me bring this message that you've been talking about making Europeans safer, more prosperous, more influential in the world. And if I had, for example, to go and talk to someone in the street here in rural Spain, close to Malaga, someone blue collar worker who is changing, is taking a break from a long day of work, and I have to explain this in under 1 minute. How would how would I approach this, right? And at the end of the day, it's all about saying, hey, the war is tough, like you said. China is attacking us commercially. We have Russian tanks in the border, and not Americans. They are no longer an ally. So we are by ourselves, and we need to protect ourselves. So by going to Montenegro, we are gonna have one more country where we can sell the goods that we can no longer sell to other parts of the world. We can show Russians that they don't mess up with our borders, that Montenegro is part of the EU and is not gonna go back to Russia, and we are going to fill that political vacuum. And I'm going to say that by adding more members, like for example in the case of Spain, they are going to do better, the whole union is going to do better, and everyone is going to benefit just in the same way that we Spaniards benefited from EU membership, and the Portuguese, etc. So those are like the kind of tangible messages that we can bring to people to make sure that they understand why we are talking about bringing a new member to a club of 27, right? Let's talk a little bit about the safeguards. So that person, imagine that he was convinced by me, which I doubt that he will need more reassuring, and say, but how do we make sure? How have we made sure that this is not going to be like another Hungary in the EU, that it's not going to be a problem inside our house rather than having a problem, on the other side of the road? How can we convince them? How can we explain the process that they had to go through?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll also need to definitely tie the reforms to joining the EU, and that needs to be done. That's going to be done in a lot more in a stricter way than it has been done so far. Montenegro they're closing chapters like crazy fast. Okay, so they have already,
which means closing chapters.
They have closed. They have managed to do all the reforms that has to with rule of law, with transparency, with anti-corruption, environment, climate, economic, all those different standards you need to reach.
So I say like we put them like a to-do list, and they like cross.
And they do it. They've done it all.
Okay.
They already adopted the EU, the euro. They've been in NATO for years. I mean, they are basically like an EU member state without any of the rights and benefits of it.
All right. So it's all about saying, hey, no one took a shortcut here.
Yeah.
These guys had been doing the work. Actually, the work that we asked them to do.
Yeah.
And now they are ready to join without unresolved problems, right?
Yeah.
And I think that reassurance is important. Like you can see parallelisms, for example, in the debate around migration, right? When you do follow due process, people feel more accepting and more open towards migration than when it's not. And enlargement is especially long process, very tedious, and that really puts all the strain, all the burden on the accession or the country that is ready to join us. So I think that is also a story that we learned from the 2004 enlargement, and maybe at this point we can take a short step back and say, okay, you know since the famous enlargement, the last round of enlargement, which was like decades ago, we've only had bad stories in the EU, right? The UK decided to leave, even though now they're trying to come back. So we also need the EU needs to have like this political momentum and this good political story to tell,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think a lot of the valid concerns, you mentioned it too, how do we make sure that it's not going to be another Hungary, Orban situation? I mean, at the moment, they have a very pro-EU government, obviously, because they're putting, reform and EU accession at the top of the agenda. But yeah, I think that this goes hand in hand, and that's something that's going to be that's a real valid concern of people. This goes hand in hand with reform, with the veto reform and the use of the veto. I don't think like it's also up to us, like talking to somebody in a bar or, a family member is not so political to get into like the total details of that. But just I think it's important to mention, you could mention to them that is a concern, not just of this random person in a bar, but also of the commission. And von der Leyen has said that if we also expand, we get to 28 plus member states, they're going to have another look at the veto and how the veto is used, so that we don't have that situation again. So this is on the agenda.
I think people understand that even in a small family, it's very difficult to get people to agree on things. Imagine in 28 member states, and one person in a group cannot hijack and cannot stop the whole group.
Sure.
And that we're going to address that as part, not only because of Montenegro, but because it has been seen that it has made our ability in Europe to be influential, to be stronger. It has weakened that ability.
Yeah, Hungary's use of the veto has shown the weakness of enlargement, actually, but that cannot be the reason that we don't enlarge. We have to just fix that system and fix that problem, but we can't avoid enlargement altogether because of it.
And people like reform. When you say to people, this is not working, we're going to change it, there are two ways here. We're going to change it so we go back to an era of, like nostalgic argument, an era where everything was perfect, there were no problems. They were thinking about Europe with, 2 world wars in one century. And to say that to go back to an era where nation states would be better positioned to resolve these issues by themselves, to me, is a little bit of a joke. Or you say we need to fix the system so that we are ready for the future. So it's more about looking at the future with confidence, looking at the future with more tools to be able to navigate this wall. And I think people get it. I think people get that our neighbors are hostile, militarily, commercially, politically. We are not in the place that we were 10 years ago. And we got to change not for the sake of Montenegro, which it will be good for Montenegro, but for the sake of all Europeans to be safer, to be more prosperous, to be more influential, to have a greater hand in our destiny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And maybe last thing, and probably you can say a few things about this, is about, please, not one centralized campaign from Brussels, pushing down through the rest of Europe. But maybe let's talk about other things that we have addressed in previous podcasts about best practices, decentralized campaigning, use of influencers. And so what other ideas can we give to people thinking about communicating enlargement, what they should be doing to have a decentralized way to communicate?
Yeah, I mean, also just physically, I mean, look at the map of the EU. It feels unfinished.
Yes.
It's always like carved out at the Western Balkans. We should also look beyond that, right? I mean, we were talking about, Ukraine, right? At some point, we were talking about also Turkey and Georgia, and some of those have stalled. But Moldova, right, has also actually adopted the reforms a lot. So we also have to look at like the unfinished picture of Europe in a way, and also tell people that they can dream. It's not crazy to dream just because the last enlargement was in 2013 with Croatia, that it's very much tangible, and it would somehow complete the European story, to enlarge. And I think that there's no we talk about the future of Europe, it has to be with enlargement. And I've never seen, I've been following this topic for a long time. I haven't seen the topic of enlargement so high on the agenda as I've seen it in the last couple years. And I think that was especially when the Russian war in Ukraine started. That I think changed the game for how we look at the future of Europe and future of European security and even European identity. And I think that was the turning point. Since then, enlargement has been at the top of the EU institutions agenda. Now we need to take it from the EU institutions agenda, from the PDF, and put it into the kitchen table talks of people.
All right. So Montenegro is ready is not the message. The message is Europeans will be safer, will be more prosperous, will be stronger, more influential in this world, thanks to bringing broader countries in, and that is the message that has to be sent out in many different ways, both rationally, but also using the power of sports, culture, movies, experiences, tourism. I think we really need to do like a major effort across all channels in a decentralized way, using influencers, using really the people who the stories of the people from Montenegro who are with us, but also stories of wider Europeans and how we need to become more united, more complete. I love the word that you said. We need to complete our union, because right now in the map there's like a big gap in the Balkans, and we need to get these brothers in before someone else with more spurious interest goes first.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So we can wrap it up here. And next episode is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be about something a little bit lighter. Am I right? What is it going to be about, Manila?
We're going to have a look at some popular and famous TV characters and movie characters and guess their political affiliations. I love doing this like in real life. So I'm excited to do it now in the podcast.
Other people have other hobbies, but yeah, we're going to link into that. And see you in the next podcast.
Yeah,
Thank
see you
you
there.